Good afternoon, Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Saturday edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion, August 27th, 2016. Boy, the map is starting to look more and more busy with each passing day. Several areas to watch out on the Atlantic. Plus, we have Gaston sitting in here. This is just the future development map, but we do have 5 total systems. I guess you could count them all. And this is what we're supposed to have at the end of August. So let's take a look at what's happening first in the Eastern Pacific, because this is going to be very important over the coming week. This is Tropical Storm Madeline, and it's going to be a hurricane fairly soon, and then bend back towards the west as high pressure builds to its north, and it should send this system towards the Hawaiian Islands. So this will be something to watch. It's still several days away, more than 5 days out. And I will be focusing on this more and more as we get into especially early next week, and the window of possible impact begins to shorten, so to speak, the time frame at least. And so basically what I've noticed over the past several years, we've had some threats and impacts to Hawaii in 14 and 15, and for the most part it wasn't too significant, and the reason being is most of these systems were coming towards Hawaii from the east, and that's a very difficult angle to hit Hawaii with a hurricane from. Usually we see the really bad ones, like in 1992, that's 24 years ago now. They come in from sort of the south. This isn't the exact track that Iniki took, but you get the idea. They typically need to come in from a lower latitude and then turn because of a trough and cut across the Hawaiian Islands to bring hurricane conditions. Otherwise, there's just too many factors in sort of this microclimate that exists out here that seems to erode tropical cyclones as they approach from the east. But we'll still certainly keep an eye on things, because behind Madeline would be Lester. And this is forecast to be a hurricane. Actually, it is a hurricane. Come on, Mark, get with the program. And it's going to move almost due west. You don't see that very often in the tropics for that many days, a almost straight west line, and then the Hawaiian Islands would be just a couple of more days off the left of the map here, off to the west. So we got to watch this first and foremost, as Hawaii, as you should know, is part of the United States, and we don't ignore them, even though they are in the Pacific. It's part of the National Hurricane Center's area of responsibility, so I'm going to talk about it and make sure that people are aware. And as I said, once we get closer to the time frame of something potentially happening, I'll discuss what impacts to expect in that area. It's not time to hit the panic button yet. Just keep an eye on what's going on with Madeline and Lester. All right? So back in the Atlantic Basin, a lot of sort of excitement, if you will, this morning. Remember, when I use the word excitement, I don't always mean in a positive way, like, oh, we're excited that we're going to get to go to Disney World. That's not what I mean. It's just a descriptive term. And so this morning, that being said, there was a lot of excitement about the convective increase here with 99L in the Bahamas. And some were speculating maybe this might go on to develop after all. Maybe the H-Wharf was right, the Canadian was right, etc. When I say the Canadian, I'm talking about the Canadian model, the CMC, and others that have tried to predict that this will develop. But it just doesn't seem like the overall environment through this area is going to support much happening. But every time we say that, it gets a little better organized each day over the last couple, when this looked like it was going to be dying right there on the vine. So notice a couple of things here. The vorticity signature, nice and round, no doubt about it. But let me point out a couple of other things that are interesting. So before, and the system we're going to talk about over Africa is still over Africa, way over here, not even on the map yet. But we have Gaston, and then we have our area southwest of Bermuda. We have 99L, and then this system here near the Texas coast, and then of course Lester. So it's interesting that the vorticity signature shows up so well, and I really love this map. So it's really nice to use because you can clearly see what you're looking for sometimes amongst a lot of other weather noise that's out there. So anyhow, back to the discussion at hand. Pretty nice signature with this, increasing vorticity overall, but still not very strong. And when you look at what's happening here with Lester and Gaston out here in the Atlantic, those vorticity signatures are much stronger. Even the one up here southwest of Bermuda doesn't look too bad. So what's going to happen with all these systems? Well, let's go back and look at the tropical weather outlook map for the Atlantic. This system here headed towards, and this is, by the way, 91L, headed towards maybe the Carolina coast, maybe some limited development, something to keep an eye on, especially offshore boating interest here in the Gulf Stream. Overall impacts probably low, maybe kicking up the surf a little bit. And again, this system down here, the chances of development keep going down, and then really not much to expect from our system near the Texas coast. But this area, off of Africa, will be the one to watch, and I'll get to that in just a moment. So the upper level winds, we can see clearly that at least now there are less in the way of upper level winds cutting across the system. And let me zoom in on this a little better. That'll help. So it has a little bit more favorable upper level wind pattern around it for the most part. They're kind of spreading out a little bit more divergent pattern. You know, they're going away from the system instead of coming across it. But if we look at the actual shear analysis here from the University of Wisconsin, the Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies, wonderful products they've put out over the past, I've watched this stuff. I think the University of Wisconsin stuff's got to have been online for more than 10 years. I have to go back and look, but they just keep getting better and better. But you can see that, yes, there's a little favorability area right here between the not so favorable and the system itself, 99L in Cuba, but right next to that you do have this little core, and these winds are coming down this way, right across the top of the system. And shear is shear, folks. It doesn't matter which direction it comes from. A lot of people seem to think that when you have these tropical waves coming across the Atlantic like this as an example, and then strong upper level winds are coming out in this direction from the southwest, that's basically the main way that we get shear, something running head on from east to west into winds blowing from the west. Well, you can have northerly shear, pretty much any vector you can get shear from if it's blowing too strong across the top of the system. And that is the key here, that when the winds blow across the system, it's just like blowing out a candle. It really is. You blow out a candle, and the harder you blow on it going across the top of that flame, eventually you're going to snuff it out. So this wind shear coming around this way from that upper level low, definitely blowing across the top of it, decapitating any thunderstorm activity that might be trying to get together around that low level center, and it's just not going to have much of a chance to develop. And I think that's going to be the way this pans out over the next few days. It's not a 0% chance of development, but this is not going to be, it's not going to be a hurricane approaching Florida right now. But let me talk real quick about the impacts here in Florida. Don't ignore the potential for heavy rain and squalls with this system, especially in South Florida. Just be aware of that, please, especially all the marine and boating interest and recreational activities down there. This is a hazard. It's coming from the tropics. It does have impacts, but they are low in the scheme of things, but not zero. All right? So just make sure that you keep up with what's happening from your local National Weather Service office, marine forecast advisories, that kind of thing. All right? So now let's look out at Africa. I think this is the first time that I have ever shown a GFS map of Africa to illustrate my point here. And the first time, right? I think it is. So let me show you what we have here. We're not used to seeing this. West coast of Africa right here. There's Cape Verde. The southwest coast of Africa, we have Senegal in here. And then the Cape Verde Islands. I've seen them referred to as Cabo Verde. Is that how you say it? The Cabo Verde Islands, but I know it as the Cape Verde Islands. We'll call them Cape Verde Hurricanes for a reason. All right, so here's the west coast of Africa here, and there is the vorticity signature valid tomorrow morning over southwest Africa. And yes, I have to brush up on my geography of the region. Even though I'm a geography degree holder, I don't have all the countries of the entire world memorized, and I will admit that. So it's sitting here over Southwest Africa in the Sahel region. You see, that's where I know things better, is by the geographic weather term. We know the Sahel, and we know the Sahara and things like that, the Congo, but the individual countries, I got to get on that. But anyhow, here it is. Pretty good vorticity signature already, moving to the west, and this is valid Sunday morning. This would be Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning. It's out over the Atlantic here near the Cape Verde Islands and moving west. And if we switch positions in the GFS now to the Atlantic Basin, here is eastern North America, United States, etc., Central America, South America, so forth and so on. There is the west coast of Africa. There is Gaston. Probably going to be a powerful hurricane now that it is escaping all of these negative conditions that have been hanging around it like a friend that drags you down, right? One of those people. That's what's been happening, and Gaston's going to shed that negative relationship, if you will, and head out into the Atlantic, strengthening and adding to the ACE score and causing some issues for maritime interests. They need to avoid that, obviously. But here is what will almost certainly become the next named storm in the Atlantic. Let me stop my iPhone so it doesn't keep doing that. Hopefully it won't. And we're going to have to watch this because you notice it is south of a very stout 500 millibar deep layer ridge, even though this is the 850 millibar chart. This ridge is very thick in the atmosphere, and most of the modeling, the European included, takes this system west for several days. So no reason to even talk about where might it end up. What do you think is going to happen? It's early in the ball game. Between now and the time it gets to 40 degrees longitude, you know, we have a lot of time to watch it. That's going to be several days. But it looks like this has the potential to be the first significant long track hurricane that we have been dealing with in one way or another since 2010 when we had Earl, and certainly 2008 if this makes it all the way across and hits somebody in the Western Basin. And you remember, we're not talking about just the U.S. here. Got the Caribbean to watch, Greater Antilles, and then the United States or Central America. So if this were to make it all the way across, it'd be the first time since Ike in 2008. So very busy. We'll be keeping an eye on Lester and Madeline in the Pacific. Hawaii, keep an eye on that. We'll certainly be watching 99L, not dismissing it, but I will be very surprised if it does more than becomes a weak tropical storm, and even that could be pushing it. So, and then of course, whatever happens off the coast of Africa, assuming it becomes 90C, it's on my mind, 92L, you never know, something else might pop up and take that. But a lot to watch as we get into next week for sure. Have a great rest of your Saturday afternoon, and as always, thanks for tuning in. I'm Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com, and before I almost forgot, I was almost to the end. I am going to be testing the ability to stream live to my YouTube channel later today, and over the next several days I have this app that I downloaded last night called Wirecast Go, and I want to make sure that it's going to be stable, because it would be really nice to be able to stream to YouTube from one of my iPhones. We have several that some of them are not active. They're just using, they're basically just a way to encode video and over a Wi-Fi network. And I want to be able to do that and stream to YouTube with our vehicle/everywhere cam, kind of like Periscope allows people to do and has been allowing people to do since last February. I cannot believe that YouTube doesn't have it in their app yet natively for everybody. So I'm using Wirecast Go, and I'm going to be testing that over the next few days to make sure it's going to work. And if it does and it's nice and stable, then I'll probably use that for the vehicle/everywhere I go camera live when and if we get a hurricane mission. So you'll probably be getting notifications when I'm streaming, and any feedback you can offer to let me know how it's doing, etc., would be greatly appreciated. And I won't do it at the 2 o'clock hour like I did last night and wake people up with notifications. Oh my goodness, is something happening? No, Mark's just testing his new app. I'll try to make sure I don't do it late at night, all right? So let me sign off again. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Have a great Saturday. I'll be back with you again tomorrow.